The laws of game and social dynamics are so precise that mastery over these laws will give you the power of foresight and predictability. To be honest, they shouldn't even be called laws. They should be called formulas because they're that consistent. Ignorance of the laws are not an excuse or an exemption from the consequences of violating the laws. Just because you don't know them and violate them out of ignorance doesn't mean the laws will stop violating you back. So if you know what's good for you, heed my warning. Learn the laws. Today I'll be teaching you the fundamental laws of the game. Pay attention. The first law is that there are no inherently good or inherently bad women. Every woman has within her the exact same capacity for good as she does for evil. Women will switch their method of operation from good to evil or vice versa, depending on what she believes her most pressing and immediate needs for safety and comfort are. Basically, she's going to employ good or evil, depending on what she believes will get her closer to a feeling of safety, comfort, and certainty. Ultimately, they're just another organism trying to survive, you feel me? It's just that sometimes they feel like in order to meet their selfish endeavors and objectives, they have to run through you, step on your neck, and break your heart. And I promise you, even though it might not sound like that, it really isn't malicious most of the time. The best thing about this law is that it forces you to live in accordance to it by making you not take anything a woman does to you seriously, good or bad, because those who don't live in accordance to the law end up bitter and resentful. Not to mention, it completely blinds them from seeing a woman's true capacity for good and evil. There are absolutely no exemptions to this law. Going off the previous law, the next law is the law of change, which states that everything in the game is always subject to change. No particular circumstance, situation, or position is permanent in the game. The concept of permanence does not exist here, and that's primarily because of female nature and how temporary women's emotions are. Whenever someone says a woman's emotions are temporary, people always think about that in the negative, even though that lack of permanence in emotion works both ways, positively and negatively. A woman can go from being completely indifferent about you to hating your guts and everything you stand for, just as easily as she can go from despising you to being completely obsessed with you. It is not harder or more time-consuming to take a woman from negative to positive than vice versa. So don't lose hope when a woman isn't behaving positively towards you. But at the same time, don't get too comfortable when she does either, you feel me? Now, the only exemption to this law is when you guide her into hypnotic rhythm. That, in my experience, is the closest thing to permanence you'll ever get. If you don't know what hypnotic rhythm is, go and watch my series on it. It's on YouTube and TikTok. The next law is a law for refocusing your attention in the game. It states that women are never to be seen as the end goal, the major point, or the primary focus in the game. Women should simply be viewed and used as a litmus test for your psychological and emotional strength. What they are primarily is a test and a measuring stick for your strength and confidence. And if you use them correctly, they can become a very valuable tool for your own self-actualization. There is absolutely nothing in the world that can test your confidence and strength quite like a woman can. No business or athletic endeavor, no fitness journey, nothing. A woman's tests are unique to only them because of the very specific way they get you to psychologically invest. You see that? Their tests revolve around getting you to see them as the priority. That's why you see a lot of cases of men that succeed in every other endeavor, but still manage to fail woefully with women, because they're violating the law and making the woman their priority. And in case you were wondering, there is absolutely no exemption to this law. Failure to live in accordance to this law will lead to, well, this.
I've had a feeling that maybe I love her a little more than she loves me. I put all of my importance on her. And my friends, they expressed that to me. They said, yo, yeah, you're spending a lot of time with her, man.
Turn this image into your mind every time you feel like you want to make a woman your priority. The next law is that game is primarily psychological for men and physiological for women. Another way to put it is that men improve their chances in game by improving their inner confidence, and women do the same by improving their outer beauty. In essence, your inner confidence is what determines the level of beauty in a woman you can get. I don't need to ask a man how confident he is. I just need to look at his woman. Because having a highly desirable woman in your life demands a higher level of confidence. Now, the obvious exemption to this rule is that not every beautiful woman has the self-esteem to match. But honestly, even those cases don't have a long shelf life because the universe will always correct itself. That's how God created it. The next law is that psychological positioning is everything in the game. This particular law of game exists in accordance to a law of female nature. which is that it is biologically impossible for a woman to consolidate on a man she sees as her inferior. A simpler way to put it is that women do not want a man they think they can do better than. Women are looking for the absolute best option within their reach that they can find. Because for them, getting chosen by someone they see as superior is the ultimate validation. So game exists to help men psychologically position themselves above women because it is impossible to get a woman otherwise. The whole point of game is to make her view you as a catch and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Failure to live in accordance to this law will lead to you getting no bitches. I'm not even trying to be funny. Every woman you will ever be able to pull in your entire life would have seen you at some point as psychologically superior to her, plain and simple. The next law of game states that relationships are an exchange of value. All relationships, especially those between men and women, are fundamentally transactional. All relationships are based on a need that both parties have and also recognize the other party as being able to meet. No relationship can exist between two people if both parties didn't have needs that could be met by each other. If both parties truly feel fulfilled in themselves, then there's no need for the relationship to exist. It is impossible to seduce someone that has absolutely no need for the values you provide or is completely fulfilled in those areas. Just like you would never leave the house to go get more milk if you already have milk in the fridge. I realize there's going to be a lot of people that previously believed that you needed to be fulfilled first before you enter a relationship. But if those people were to take a close introspective look at their own lives and experiences, they'll come to find that all relationships exist and survive based on what both parties are getting out of it. Whether that be social, psychological, emotional, physical, mental, monetary, or a unique combination of some of all of those things. Think about it. Every single breakup you will ever experience in your life will happen because of just one reason. And that reason is that one party feels like they're not getting out of the relationship as much as they're investing into it. That's it. No matter what the reason for the breakup is, they're really just saying the exact same thing. This little deal that we have is not a good deal for me anymore. Now, for the sake of being thorough, this law has a sub-law attached to it called the law of the pulling force, something I touched on a little bit in a video about texting girls. And in that video I said, before you text a girl, you have to ask yourself two questions. One, is there a positive reason or a benefit she stands to gain that'll pull her towards texting you back? And two, is there a negative emotion or consequence that she can only avoid by texting you? If the answer to those two questions is no, go ahead and put the phone down, buddy. She's not texting you back. When it comes to women, there always has to be some kind of pulling force that will attract her towards you. They always have to have a strong reason to be motivated to get closer to you. And in my personal experience, the strongest reasons are the unique value you provide. Because, say it with me, relationships are transactional. And I'm sure this is a little redundant for me to say, but just to put it out there are no exemptions to this law. Failure to live in accordance to this law will make you not just a naive and oblivious man, but it'll also make you a man that isn't meticulous or thorough enough about the value you provide in the relationships you're in. Why I love this law so much. It forces you to become vigilant about not being in a value deficit to someone else. You instantly become the kind of person people love to exchange value with because they know they'll be getting more than they deserve from you. That right there is the secret to having multiple women in your life and having them all be okay with it. The next law is the law of resistance. It states that resistance is inevitable, no matter how much a woman likes you and finds you attractive from the jump. Biology is designed to make her give you some kind of resistance to see how you handle it. This is yet another law that exists in accordance to a law of female nature. As we all know by now, women want to attract the attention of and be chosen by the strongest man within their reach. But women are also aware that men have an incentive to lie to women about how strong they really are. It's within a woman's best interest to authenticate the strength levels of her potential suitors. What is the best way to test for the presence of strength of any kind? Resistance. Whenever a man presents himself as a potential suitor to a woman's natural reaction is to observe and see how that man responds to resistance. And in fact, different kinds and types of resistance. Sometimes it'll come from the woman in question. Other times, she'll sit back and observe how you respond when others choose not to cooperate with you. And other times, she wants to see how you respond to the normal trials and tribulations of life. She's going to be paying close attention to stuff like your ability to stay calm under pressure, your emotional maturity, your stress management, etc. These are the things that'll help her authenticate you as a strong man that she can truly trust the leadership of. Oh, and by the way, that authentication process never ends. Because women are a creature that truly exists in the moment, they have evolved to have temporary emotions, which means a short-term memory for your authentication. Simply put, just because she saw you as a strong, competent leader last month, doesn't mean she'll continue to see you that way into perpetuity. You have to continue to earn your stripes because they get stripped off of you every once in a while. Now, while there are no exemptions to this law, there are a few nuances that exist. And it always revolves around your own ability to preemptively get ahead of her resistance. Because don't forget, the entire point of the resistance is to help her get answers to questions that she may have about you. If you have the ability to demonstrate the answer to those questions before she has a chance to ask them within herself, and you can do it in a believable, honest, and authentic way, then her using resistance to try to get the answers to those questions is kind of redundant, isn't it? In those few cases where you already have an honest status symbol or a demonstration of high value that goes ahead of you for you, then resistance just won't exist. It's not necessary. Failure to live in accordance with the law of resistance is literally where incels come from. Not kidding. Every time a man allows himself to believe that women are not in a position to test his confidence or authenticate his competence, slips further and further into isolation and loneliness because women cannot trust him or take a chance on him. I mean, it's women we're talking about. We all know how safety oriented they are. Now, one last thing I want you to keep in mind about the law of resistance is the counter law. Please, please, please pay close attention to this. Don't get so caught up in trying to pass her resistance and objections that you forget to fire your own tests. Just like she has a right to authenticate who you claim to be, you have a right to make sure that she's right for you in compatibility and compliance. As a man, you're the gatekeeper of relationships and commitment. Act like it. If you want more in-depth information about how to get past a woman's resistance and objections, go check out my shit test guide. The next law of game is the law of expectations, which states that your expectations in the game becomes your reality. Because the game for men is mostly psychological, as discussed in the previous law, a man's mind and thinking around women will either be his salvation or his prison. You get out of the game what you expect out of the game. That means everything from how you expect women to treat you to what you think is possible with women is predetermined in advance by you. Now keep in mind, it'll be of no benefit to you to know the inner workings of all that. But as a scientist, it is my job to explain things just like that, so here it goes. First of all, your expectations in the game are a result of your ideas. And your ideas are a combination of your own thoughts and feelings and outside influence. These things come together to create your unique perspective and view of the game. And the way you perceive anything will inevitably affect the way you behave and make decisions around it, even down to your subtle, unconscious behavioral cues. You're also going to begin to subconsciously look for evidence of your perception. For instance, if you genuinely believe that beautiful women do not find you attractive, and you perceive beautiful women as out of your reach or unattainable, then what would be your natural response when a beautiful woman actually shows you interest? You would probably meet it with a lot of disbelief and doubt, because you don't expect beautiful women to find you attractive, and as a result, it cannot be a part of your reality. Now, if you don't take that first point as backed up, tested, and proven science, that's fine. This next point is irrefutable. And that's the fact that women are assessing and estimating your levels of competence and confidence through your behavioral cues. Despite what they may have you believe, women are not mind readers. They are, however, experts at a biological evolutionary form of cold reading. They understand deeply that a man's behavior is inextricably linked to his power. They're constantly using a man's behavioral cues as a way to measure his strength and power. So if you behave towards women like you expect them to treat you well, they will take that at face value. Why do you think when I talk about pre-selection, I always say you don't have to have women physically present with you? You can do something far subtler like making fun of her forehead or telling her she has a cute resting bitch face. And that'll be more than enough to let her know, yeah, this guy gets bitches. Why? Because the assumption she's going to be making in her head is, if this guy can say something like that to me with audacity and playfulness without flinching, and I am a hot girl everyone is too scared to talk to like that, then that tells me he's gotten away with behavior like that in the past. AKA, he gets bitches. Please understand that the evidence that you are, for instance, irresistible to women, will never precede your acceptance or expectation of that fact. You must first believe that you're attracted to beautiful women, then the world will show you evidence for it, not the other way around. Just so we're clear, this is not a fake it till you make it type of thing. This is a believe it, then see it thing, regardless of the physical evidence. There are absolutely no exemptions to this law. Failure to live in accordance to this law will make you a slave to your current undesirable reality. You'll be stuck in a loop of looking at the current evidence of your bad dating life, accepting that evidence to be your current reality, and then subconsciously seeking even more evidence for it. This is a good point to ask you to do your own research on stuff like the confirmation bias and the reticular activation system, RAS. Also, I have a course called Self-Belief that literally deals with getting you out of that negative loop, and it's completely free. Go check the link in my bio. The next law of game is the law of tension, which states that it is impossible to create attraction without tension. Another way to put it is that in order for two people to be truly attracted to each other, the risk of rejection has to be a constant possibility, because true attraction is born from inconsistency and uncertainty. Contrary to popular belief, seduction isn't supposed to be all smooth and positive. What makes seduction exciting and fun is the possibility that it might not happen. So in a way, tension is there to remove any guarantees of attraction and the validation that comes with it, while simultaneously significantly increasing the chance that it does happen. So whenever you want to create attraction, go out of your way to create tension first. Failure to live in accordance to this law will banish you to the friend zone. Anytime you try to create attraction without looking for opportunities to inject tension, strip away any chances of her feeling uncertain about you, and the need to chase your validation that comes with achieving attraction with you. There are absolutely no exemptions to this law. The next law is the law of operant conditioning, which states that whatever behavior you reward, you see more of, and whatever behavior you punish, you see less of, which means you should praise good behavior and punish bad behavior. Simple enough. I don't think the law in itself is particularly complex or hard to understand. What I think most men have an issue with is living in accordance to the law. And that's because most men may not realize they may be punishing good behavior and rewarding bad behavior by accident. So I'll give you a quick and easy way to understand punishment and reward as far as operant conditioning goes. It really all comes down to your time and attention. For the vast majority of situations, you can use a distribution of your time and attention to punish or reward behavior. The better the behavior you're seeing, the more time and attention they get. If the behavior is less than ideal, you withdraw your time and attention. And mind you, as far as women go, there's no real difference between positive and negative time and attention. Whether that time is spent making her feel loved, appreciated, special, and validated, or it's spent giving her a hard time and arguing with her. As far as she's concerned, attention is attention. Some men think their girls pick fights with them because she's irrational, unreasonable, and emotional, when it's more likely that these men have shown their women through their words and behavior that picking fights with them is the only way to get their attention. See the point? That is a textbook example of rewarding bad behavior and not realizing it. So be careful how you distribute your time and attention. Now, the one caveat to the law of operant conditioning is that it works hand in hand with the law of psychological positioning. You can only reward or punish a woman's behavior when she actually values your opinion. That means she actually has to look up to you and see you as a source of validation. Trying to influence a woman's behavior while she sees you as positionally lower is a complete waste of time. For more information about the law of operant conditioning, watch my series Validation 101. Next law of the game is the law of double standards. And from where I'm standing, it happens to be the most violated law. This is the law that states that men and women are two entirely different creatures, and as a result cannot have the exact same standards applied to them equally. Since men are from Mars and women are from Venus, as they say, it is an endeavor in futility to compare the two to each other, and a complete waste of time to try to equate the two. Men and women do not think the same, prioritize the same, or respond to the exact same stimuli the exact same way. So that saying of whatever is good for the geese is good for the gander is completely misleading. There's things that men need and can do that women don't need and cannot do, and vice versa. And like I said before, this is by far the most violated law there is. In fact, I would go as far as saying that all the beef that men and women have with each other today stems from the constant violation of this law. If as a man you can walk through life remembering that women should not be held to the same standards as you, and as a woman you can walk through life remembering that men should not be held to the same standards as you, then you're going to instantly find so much more success in your relationship with the opposite sex. Failure to live in accordance to this law will have you living in confusion and playing the role of the opposite sex. That's why you see a lot of examples of a lot of men bitching, complaining, nagging, and avoiding responsibility, and a lot of women trying to do their best impression of an unshaking, unwielding protector. It's also why you see a lot of people being depressed and not able to control their emotions, because they're being compared to the opposite sex and being told to feel emotions that aren't natural to them. And this law, by the way, is a perfect segue into my next law. The next law of the game is the law of agreeability. Pay very close attention. It's a law that exists in accordance to the previous law of double standards. And it's a law I made mention of in my shit test guide, so if you've seen it, say it with me. Agreeable women are attractive. Agreeable men are not. Women achieve emotional relevance to a man by being agreeable. The more they're willing to make adjustments to accommodate the man, the more likely they are to get the man to emotionally invest, because men have a biological incentive to invest in compliance, especially when that compliance is coming from a woman that has high SMV. On the other hand, men achieve emotional relevance to a woman by being congruent, and a major part of being congruent is being disagreeable. In fact, because it's in a woman's nature to test the congruence of a man, it's inevitable that he has to be disagreeable to her at some point. If he chooses complying with her as opposed to staying firm in his identity as a man, then he effectively fails the congruence test. The entire point of congruence is being firm in your identity as a man, not allowing any outside influence, including her, to let you behave outside of who you believe yourself to be. The opposite of that is to sell yourself short for some kind of instant gratification. And your willingness to do that instantly makes women lose respect for you. Now, isn't that interesting? The same thing that makes a woman more desirable to a man makes a man less desirable to a woman, in perfect accordance to the previous law of double standards. So whenever you're in doubt as to who should be the more accommodating and agreeable partner in the relationship, it's the woman. It's always the woman. And not because I'm saying it or because I'm doing it for my own selfish endeavor or because I'm misogynistic or anything like that. It is quite literally how our biology is designed. Allow this portion of my message to be motivation for you as a man to hold frames stronger in your relationships. Whenever you find yourself at a point of contention with your girl and you're wondering who should be the one making the compromise right now, the answer is her. And guess what? As a man, you're going to naturally feel the strong urge to provide for and protect her because she made that compromise for you. And if you try to do the bending for her, then guess what happens? She loses respect for you anyway, which means inevitably bye-bye relationship. So it's quite literally your way or no way at all. Because if it ends up being her way, then it's gonna be no way anyway. You gotta think chess-like with these things, long-term and consequential. Don't think you're being smart by conceding the battle, because you're gonna end up losing the war anyway. And don't just think about the big ultimatums either. Think about the small concessions you might be making on a daily basis. And don't try to be fair or just with it. Be selfish, because there is no more congruent a man than a selfish one. Think about that. When you look out for your benefit first, holding frame becomes second nature, which makes you less susceptible to failing congruence tests. There, I just cured your simping disease. Go and simp no more. The next law of the game is the law of nonchalance, and it states that the power something holds is directly proportional to the level of seriousness you attribute to it. Simply put, whatever you choose to take seriously will be maximized, and whatever you choose to brush aside as unimportant is minimized. Another way to put it is, if you make it a big deal, then it will become a big deal. This law is a derivative of the law of expectations, but it has less to do with how you see things and more to do with how you treat things. And according to the previous laws and female nature, women are observing and reacting to your behavioral cues, which means they're basing their expectations off of yours. Whatever you choose to take seriously, they choose to take seriously. And whatever you choose to dismiss, they'll dismiss as well. Now, that is not to say that women will not try to guilt you into taking certain things seriously. In fact, one of the major things you need to know about this law is how much better women are at using it. Women are naturals at making men take things that benefit them seriously, and using misdirection and dismissal to take attention away from some of their less than ideal behavior. It's one of their major tools for frame control and manipulating men's behavior. You can see clear evidence of this if you observe the standards women try to place on men. Who decided it was a cardinal sin for men to like other women's Instagram photos while they're in a relationship? Who decided that it's the man that's insecure if he tries to stop his woman from wearing overly revealing clothes in public or on social media? Who made up the rule that a man has to go above and beyond to prove his love for a woman? Women did, and men fell for it. Now, the only exemptions to this law are things outside of your control. You can choose to minimize or maximize anything you want unless it is something that is irrefutable. So for instance, if she's grieving the loss of a family member, you can't selfishly minimize that. That'll just make you look socially uncalibrated. Failure to live in accordance to this law will make you susceptible to female manipulation. You'll end up dancing to the beat of her drums, which will make her naturally lose respect for you. Not to mention it'll make it near impossible for you to hold frame properly in front of her. You'll know you're not living in accordance to the law when you start apologizing for things you didn't do. You find yourself losing and being wrong in every argument. You're being super cautious not to offend, and you have a lot of anxiety when you think about confronting her for her less than ideal behavior. The next law of the game is the law of validation. And this law states that the quality of value provided is directly proportional to the amount of effort put in to get it. Basically, if you want your validation to mean something to women, then you have to make sure that they put in work to get your validation. If it's given too freely or with no effort on their part, it will not be appreciated. So it's your job to erect some kind of buffer, barrier to entry, initiation process, etc., so that she can put in the work to be validated by you. This is one of those laws that I'm genuinely surprised isn't common sense by now. But the reason for that is because most people don't understand the application of the law. A lot of people misinterpret this law to mean don't ever validate women. I blame the red pill for that. Other people, who are even more lacking in comprehension skills to be honest with you, wrongfully interpret this law to mean that if you compliment, agree with, or empathize with a woman, you're a simp. And what those men don't realize is that the creature they're dealing with, women, are primarily motivated by validation. That's the third law of female nature, I believe. So the idea isn't to completely cut off your validation from women. That's silly and won't work. The idea is to intelligently use your validation to get women to comply to you. Like using the carrot on the stick to make the horse gallop in the direction you want it to. And just like the horse galloping to earn that carrot, you have to make sure she works hard to earn your validation. For more intricate details on distributing validation correctly, go and watch my series Validation 101. The next law is the law of demonstration. This is by far the easiest law to remember. Actions speak louder than words. You'll make a lot more progress demonstrating in real life that you are who you claim to be than just merely trying to convince and talk about it. Real life in-person demonstration will always hold more weight because of the authenticity factor. You can better authenticate that you are who you say you are when you demonstrate it in front of her in person. This right here is why cold approach pickup will always be king. It's much easier to appear charming, well-balanced, and socially calibrated online, but much harder to appear that way in real life and in real time, especially when resistance comes up. This is why women place so much weight on real live in-person demonstrations of value. Whenever you want to communicate something about yourself to a woman, show, don't tell. Now, there is an exemption to this law, but it's a very tricky one. Because if you closely observe this law, you realize that the exemption to it is slowly expiring over time. The exemption to this law used to be the use of technology, like I mentioned before. The rule was simple. If you couldn't demonstrate in real life, then just use a video or picture to authenticate your claims. The problem with that exemption now is twofold. For one, technology has advanced to the point where you can't even really trust videos or pictures for authenticity anymore. But surprisingly enough, that's the lesser issue. The main issue has to do with the presentation of the evidence you're trying to provide. In the year of our Lord 2024, when I'm recording this video, where everyone on social media is obsessed with the idea of showing receipts, we're slowly getting to the point where we're being oversaturated with the idea of showing receipts. We're beginning to become suspicious of those who show their own receipts. Basically, we're slowly getting to the point where we don't trust people who show proof of their own claims because we might think they have an agenda. And to some degree, women have always been like this. Women are instantly going to become suspicious of you if you keep showing them proof of you in a good light. So as far as you're concerned, just stick strictly to in-person demonstrations. If you don't live in accordance to this law, women will doubt your authenticity. The next law of the game is the law of overcompensation. Not to be confused with the natural law of compensation. It's an entirely different thing. The law of overcompensation states that if you find yourself in a deficit or in any kind of a disadvantage, the amount of effort you put in to get out of that deficit has to match or surpass the deficit itself in degree and magnitude. Simply put, the worse things get for you in the game as far as getting the results you want to see, the more conscious and deliberate effort you have to put in to start seeing the results you want to see. This applies to everything from your game to your confidence to one-on-one interactions. The further down you go, the harder it is to climb out. I'm gonna give you a few examples to make it even easier to understand. If you're a guy under 5'5" and you try to walk up to a girl, you have to be able to demonstrate even more competence, congruence, and confidence than the guy that's over 6 feet. You essentially have to be a short man with tall man levels of confidence, plus a little more, because that's how much effort it'll take to convince her that you don't have short man syndrome. See the point? If you're having a conversation with a woman and you notice the excitement levels in the conversation are dropping, you're gonna have to put in even more effort to take the conversation from boring to exciting than from completely dead to exciting. If you haven't had a girlfriend in a year, you're gonna have to do a lot more to get a new girlfriend than the guy who left his last relationships only 2 months ago, even if he's the one that got dumped. Now, this is one of those laws that I truly believe men already naturally understand. The problem I've come to find is that most men don't understand the correct application of this law. Most men, unfortunately, don't know how to overcompensate the correct way without looking corny or losing respect. The best situation to explain this with is the pre-breakup phase, specifically for the slow burn types of breakups. For those of you that have gotten my Science of Breakup series on TikTok, you know what I'm talking about. Most men can tell when their woman is slowly pulling away and losing interest. And most men are smart enough to know that they should probably do something about it before it's too late. The problem is most men end up overcompensating in the wrong way. They start trying to be nicer to her, take her out to dinner, buy her flowers, get her extravagant gifts, try to spend as much time as possible. But all that does is push her away even further, which increases tension, frustration, anxiety, turmoil, etc. And ironically enough, makes more room for blatant disrespect. Sound familiar? These men had the right idea for overcompensating in a deficit, they just went about it the wrong way. What they should do is overcompensate in more power, more strength, and more confidence. They should take drastic measures and do extreme things that'll inevitably, naturally elicit massive shit tests from their woman, because women naturally test your confidence to see if it's for real, and then pass those shit tests convincingly to set the new standard for their power, confidence, and strength. The quicker they can do that, the faster they can stop the breakup process, as opposed to wasting precious time trying to convince her that he's a changed man. Now, the exemption to the law of overcompensation is the counter law of leverage, which is kind of obvious and I already touched on before. Going back to that first example, if you're the guy that's already over 6 feet, then there's absolutely no need for you to overcompensate for your height. You already have leverage. So basically the exact same counter law as the law of resistance. Failure to live in accordance to this law, in my opinion, has the worst consequences, and that is constant, incessant, unfair comparison to other men who have better, greater leverage than you. If you're digging a hole with a spoon, you should not be enviously comparing yourself to the man that's digging a hole with a shovel. You have to completely ignore him and either get something better to dig with or just dig faster. Never, and I mean never, across all realms of endeavor of life, allow another man's abundance to be the excuse for your lack. This next law of the game is so important, there's a reason I decided to keep it for last. And this is the law of physical and biological grounding. This is a law that states that because we exist in a physical dimension, everything in the game ultimately comes down to our biology. No matter how hard we try, no matter how civilized and domesticated we try to be, we cannot escape the fact that on a biological level, we are first and foremost animals, and we have an incessant need to meet our biological imperatives. Every decision we make, whether we realize it or not, are all driving us towards increasing our chances of survival and replication, or as it's more commonly known, the law of biological imperative. There's a reason the best scientists like to say that all psychology is evolutionary psychology. Because if you actually observe human nature and look at all the decisions we make on a subconscious and conscious level, it'll become very obvious to you that every decision we make comes down to meeting two different goals: improving your chances of survival, as in staying alive, and getting your genetics to be passed down into the next generation somehow. This is one of the few laws that is quite literally impossible to not live in accordance to. In fact, this is one of those laws people try their hardest not to live in accordance to. Most people do not like to admit that humans are just animals that are susceptible to biological impulses. And therein lies all the misery and shattered expectations they experience. Because man is a spirit that has a soul and lives in the body, we are strictly confined to the limitations of the body. We don't have a choice in the matter. And even when we cultivate the discipline and ability to transcend the needs and wants of our physical bodies, that ascension is only temporary, and at some point we'll have to go back to meeting our body's wants and needs. It will always come back down to our biological imperatives. Now, living in accordance to this law is not hard at all. In fact, that is quite literally what you're designed to do. The problem is that as humans, we have built a concept of society and civilization that is designed to be in direct contradiction to our biological imperatives, or at the very least, makes us go around meeting our biological imperatives in a very counterintuitive way. So everything we should be naturally living in accordance to, society has told us is bad and we should be shamed for. Here's a few of my favorite examples. Society may call a woman a gold digger for only dating men of a certain financial status. Biology sees nothing wrong with a woman that chooses to cash in her value in that way. Society says that men that date multiple women are immature playboys that need to settle down. Biology states that it's impossible to have multiple women in your life without discipline, and also allows the opportunity for men who have the ability to attract multiple women to exercise those options. Society says that a woman that sleeps with another man while she has a man is a cheater and should be shamed for it. Biology insists that she should do that to secure her chances of survival by consolidating on a better, more competent man. Society says it's noble for a man to dedicate himself to taking care of a woman and the children she had with previous partners. Biology makes it very clear that there is absolutely no benefit to dedicating yourself to the propagation of someone else's seed. Now, the biggest problem people have with this law is that they think it's just an excuse for bad behavior. And the reason they think like this is because they always need to compartmentalize things into good or bad in their minds. Because if you really think about it, is it really bad behavior, or are you just calling that because it might not benefit you in certain scenarios? Once you let go of the need to label certain behaviors as bad or good, you begin to observe things objectively and not take things too personal. It's just people doing what they think is best for their own chances of survival and replication. Simple. It also has the added bonus of making people become super predictable in their behavior. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed this series. It's been very fun for me. I hope you begin to make a conscious effort to live in accordance to these laws so you don't go screw yourself up in the future. If you really enjoyed learning the fundamental laws of the game, then maybe at some point I will clue you into the advanced laws. In the meantime, check out my course, The Interview, where I pretty much talk about the practical application of the laws. Link is in the bio. It's been Jason, favorite scientist. Do with this information what you must.